Every number you have ever used, every calculation ever run, every computer ever built, all of it collapses without a single symbol, zero. And for most of human history, nobody had it. Ancient Rome built aqueducts, won wars across 3 continents, and engineered roads that still exist today. They did all of it without a symbol for nothing. The Roman numeral system had numerals for 1, 5, 10, 50, 1,000, but no zero. Try subtracting XLVI from LI in your head using only those symbols. It is possible, technically, but it is painful. Arithmetic was a specialist skill, something scribes and merchants spent years mastering, because the notation itself was working against them. The ancient Greeks had a similar problem, and their response was philosophically fascinating. Many Greek thinkers actively rejected the concept of zero on logical grounds. If something is nothing, they argued, it cannot exist. Aristotle specifically dismissed the idea of a void, of true emptiness. And because Greek philosophy dominated educated thought across the Mediterranean world, that dismissal carried enormous weight. It was not ignorance. It was a deliberate philosophical position. Zero felt dangerous to them, conceptually unstable. The Babylonians came closer than most people realize. As early as 300 BC, Babylonian astronomers were using a placeholder symbol in the middle of numbers, something to distinguish 102 from 12. But here is the catch. They never used it at the end of a number, and more importantly, they never treated it as a number itself. It was a punctuation mark, a spacing tool. You could not add it, subtract it, or multiply by it. It was a symbol that meant a gap exists here, not a symbol that meant this gap is a quantity. So for thousands of years, civilizations that were genuinely brilliant, the Greeks, the Romans, the Babylonians, worked around the absence of zero rather than through it. The question is not why they were behind. The question is why one specific civilization cracked it, and what exactly cracking it even means. In 7th century India, a mathematician named Brahmagupta wrote something that had never been written before. He laid out rules for arithmetic with a number he called shunya, meaning void or emptiness. And his rules were startlingly modern. A positive number plus shunya equals that positive number. A negative number plus shunya equals that negative number. Shunya plus shunya equals shunya. These are the rules we still teach today. But Brahmagupta went further than anyone before him. He treated zero not as a placeholder, not as a punctuation mark, but as an actual number, something you could operate on the same way you operate on 3 or 40 or a million. That conceptual leap sounds small when you say it out loud. It is not small. It is one of the most consequential intellectual moves in human history. He also got some things wrong. His rule for dividing by zero produced answers that mathematicians would argue about for centuries. He said 0 divided by 0 equals 0, which is not correct, and which created genuine confusion in later scholarship. But the errors do not diminish what he did. Getting 0 wrong in specific edge cases is completely different from not having 0 at all. Before Brahmagupta, there was another Indian mathematician whose work pointed in the same direction. Brahmagupta's predecessor Aryabhata, working in the 5th century, used a positional number system that implicitly required a zero placeholder. His work on astronomy and mathematics was sophisticated enough that zero was essentially hiding inside it. The credit for making zero explicit, for naming it and assigning it rules, belongs most clearly to Brahmagupta. And the reason India got there while Greece and Rome did not may have something to do with philosophical climate. Hindu and Buddhist traditions were genuinely comfortable with the concept of nothingness, of void, of a state that exists but contains nothing. Where Aristotle saw a logical impossibility, Indian thinkers saw a natural and even sacred state. Philosophy shapes mathematics more than most people expect. Indian mathematical ideas did not stay in India. By the 8th and 9th centuries, Arabic scholars were actively translating and extending Indian mathematical texts, and they recognized immediately that the Indian numeral system, 0 included, was superior to anything else available. The scholar Al-Khwarizmi wrote a treatise explaining the Indian numerals that became so influential across the Islamic world that the numerals themselves started being called Arabic numerals, the name we still use today. History's great rebranding. From the Islamic world, 0 moved into Europe through a path that involved medieval Spain, trade routes across the Mediterranean, and one remarkably stubborn Italian mathematician, Fibonacci, and that is not his real name, it is a nickname, but it is the one that stuck, returned to Italy in the early 13th century after years studying in North Africa. He had seen the Indian Arabic numeral system in action. He wrote a book called Liber Abaci, meaning Book of Calculation, explaining the system to European merchants and scholars. Europe did not immediately embrace it. The Roman numeral system had institutional momentum, and there were actual bans in some European cities on using the new numerals in commercial records, partly because officials worried that the symbol for 0 could be altered to look like a 6 or a 9. Change is always resisted most fiercely by whoever benefits from the existing system. But the practical advantages were overwhelming. Merchants who used the new system could calculate faster and with fewer errors. Astronomers could express enormous numbers compactly. Within 2 centuries of Fibonacci's book, the Hindu-Arabic numeral system was dominant across Europe. 0 had gone from a philosophical concept in 7th century India to the foundation of European commerce and science. The symbol itself changed along the way. Different cultures drew it differently, a dot, an oval, a small circle, but the idea remained consistent. A number that means none. A placeholder that is also a value. Something that represents nothing and yet changes everything around it. 0 is not just a historical curiosity. It is embedded in every layer of modern life in ways that are genuinely difficult to overstate. The binary code that computers run on is built from 2 digits, 1 and 0. Every file on your phone, every frame of every video you have ever watched, every message you have ever sent resolves at its lowest level into patterns of 1s and 0s. Remove 0, and there is no binary. Remove binary, and there is no modern computing. The chain of consequence goes directly back to Brahmagupta's 7th century treatise. Calculus, which Newton and Leibniz developed in the 17th century, depends fundamentally on the behavior of quantities approaching 0, limits, infinitesimals, the mathematics of continuous change. Without a rigorous concept of 0, there is no calculus. Without calculus, there is no classical mechanics, no orbital physics, no engineering of bridges or aircraft or anything that moves in a way someone needs to predict. There is also something philosophically interesting about what 0 revealed. The invention of 0 was not just adding a new number to the number line. It changed what numbers were understood to be. Before 0, numbers were primarily tools for counting things that existed. After 0, numbers could describe states of absence, of debt, of temperature below a reference point. Negative numbers only make full sense once you have 0 as the dividing line. The entire concept of a number line, with positive values on one side and negative on the other, requires 0 at its center. The real answer to who invented 0 is layered. Babylonians built the placeholder. Indian mathematicians, most precisely Brahmagupta, built the number. Arabic scholars transmitted and extended it. European mathematicians formalized it. No single inventor, no single moment. Just a concept so useful and so strange that civilization kept reaching for it across thousands of years until someone finally grabbed it completely. 0 took thousands of years and multiple civilizations to fully exist. If you want more stories about the surprising origins of things we take completely for granted, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from.